Thank you. So we're just going to restart at this point. Just to introduce myself for those people who weren't here when we started, I'm Kingsley, senior construction tech consultant at EllisDon. I just wanted to quickly introduce you to one of the tools that we use. We use a few at EllisDon. It's a few it's a tool that we've been using for just close to 8 years now. If you work on a site or on a project, you might be using something like this or ACC build. Some companies use Procore, depends on your size and your technology ecosystem, right? Also depends really on your strategy. So to your initial point, if you already use ACC for some other things, which pretty much every construction company uses some part of ACC, they could sell an extra suite to you called ACC build for an additional fee, right? So it really depends on your strategy. What we've tried to do at EllisDon is to own our own destiny. When I say that, I mean that we want to have more of our own data in-house. Because when you buy softwares, like sometimes they own your data, right? Or they technically own you in some ways, because if they create stickiness and they decide to like increase their price or whatever, like you're beholden to them, right? So for whatever reason, we chose to build some of our platforms because it makes more sense. It's a business decision, something beyond our pay grade, but you get the point. We use FewWire. It's a construction management platform designed to help GCs like us, to help some contractors like you or project teams to collaborate more, right? We're trying to be more efficient on site, to communicate better on site, to hold each other more accountable, just to track progress, resolve issues, get reports. It does pretty much the whole thing, right? How we use FewWire, like I said, is to track progress, is to communicate, to share updates with owners and subcontractors. If you're a subcontractor, how you use it is slightly different. We encourage you to share progress reports, to communicate conditions on site, and to communicate with the GC, right? It's to track your own progress too, because if you want to get paid on time, you have to show us how much work you've done over like a period of like a month or whatever, and in a timely fashion as well. One of the best ways to do it is to use a tool like this. I'll just pop into the tool and show you what we're talking about.
So it's not an internet software produced by...
No. So in this case, we're buying a tool. FewWire is owned by Hilti. It's a tool that we buy. Again, when you have multiple platforms, they're all individual, like separate platforms. There are some challenges with that when we talk about duplication of work, because you have to re-enter certain data. In more recent times, we've found ways around that kind of stuff because there are custom APIs, or like there are ways where you can use APIs to connect the data so you don't have to re-enter to Essence initial point. But what you're looking at right now is the web interface of the tool.
Yeah. I'll just clarify. My question was to know the factors or the reasons behind an organization looking for multiple softwares. That's all. There would be a reason. I'm curious and I'm interested in knowing that, rather than coming to a conclusion already that this is not good or this is bad.
No, so again, it's a strategy thing, right? Like you have to think about what you can build and what you can buy. Before the advent of software as a service, everyone buying software, having this monthly payment stuff, people build software for their core activities, right? Because they have servers in the house, like, you know what I mean, right? But now you can buy software for any amount every month. So we've taken that decision in the past to build our own tool. And I've told you for different reasons that includes owning our own data and deciding how to use and monetize that data, right? So when you've come to that conclusion, I don't think you can find one software that does QA, QC, health and safety, project management, costs. We have an FMS system that we've been using for 25 years or more, right? So we don't have one software for everything. You have to think about it in a way where when you're trying to onboard a new tool, how does it fit into your current ecosystem?
Yeah. And then that's just building off what Kingsley said, measuring that return on investment. the technology tools have a cost, not only just the cost of the actual software product, but think about the cost that it takes to train all of your staff, the cost of the time that it takes for you to onboard this new tool. All of those things factor into the cost of the investment into that software tool. And then if the return that you're getting later on, that's a part of one of the activity sessions where we want to think about some of those questions. What is the value that you're getting in return? Is this software tool going to save you 5 hours a week of manual data entry? If 5 hours a week amounts to $500, if the cost of the software is $20,000, how long will it take you of using this tool to get that return back? So it's determining early on, okay, can we do a small change to improve our processes before we have the capital to invest in adopting an entire tool? What is the size of our company? Thinking about some of those things.
The size is very important, right? Like if you think you can save $30,000 by changing software and improving process, but you have site superintendents and people on site that would frustrate your effort because it's a change management process. You can't get someone off a tool he's been using for 25 years because you want to save 35 grand. Right? Just go down tools and you're not saving any money from doing that. So our point is thinking about stuff from a business perspective too. I'll be honest, there's some emotional part of it too. It's like if someone is used to a tool and you can't get them off, it's just tough to do. Yeah, right? So I understand what you're saying. But we had this test project for TCB for just this. We wanted to show you that on this platform, you get your plans from wherever you get them from. It could be your architect. Like we get them sometime on a weekly basis. So we have different versions. So we just upload those plans on the tool, and on the bottom left, right here, you can have the different versions if you have multiple versions. In some instances, we have 13, 14 versions of the plans with different revisions, right? So you have to make sure you're looking at the most recent version, of course. And in some instances, we compare, but you get the point. All the pings you see.
Yeah, just before you go into some of the pins on this plan, just to reiterate, as a GC, we will likely be uploading these plans, but we will provide access to this tool to the subcontractors. So our subcontractors, we're giving you access to a tool where you will see the most up-to-date drawings at any point. So making sure that you can never say that you don't know which drawings you should be referring to, because with this collaborative tool, you always have access to the most up-to-date drawings. And if we as a GC did not put the most accurate drawings, then the sub can also say, hey, we were referring to this drawing that you have provided to us.
Yeah. So again, we have a company our size have unlimited access. Like we could give as many GCs or sub as we need to access. We upload those plans, like you said, like she said too. We have all of the stuff here on the left hand side for you to edit the plans. Most times you won't be doing any of this stuff anyways. It's more for us, but I'm just kind of showing you what the plans look like. The pings on there indicate that there's a task. A task could be a punch list item. That language depends on what country we're talking about. It's deficiency in some countries. Here we call them task. It's punch lists in some places as well. The idea is it's something that is to be done. Who is responsible will be determined by who is creating the task. Okay. So we have all the tasks here. We also have a photo tab because when you create a task, which I will get into very soon, you can take photos. You can upload that photo on the task. It would come into the photos tab here. We have forms. Think of forms are things that we want to track. We used to call them checklists. They're two different things. They still exist. But if we assign you a task, if you're fixing doors, for example, and we want some checklist items as part of that process, the quality aspect of the process, we expect you to fill out those. And there will be a time and date stamp on most of these forms. It's a form of audit, like log tracking, just so we know when and what happened and who's responsible for it. The files is also something that we upload as well. But I really want to touch on the forms because I want to focus on how depending on who you are here, you can use technology that has been given to you, by the way, for free by the GC to your own benefit, right? So if I was creating a task as someone who is walking around with an iPad on site, I would just go and create a task, and I would title the task something just for the sake of this session. And if I wanted a checklist item for you to complete, I could create one, but we're using the EllisDon account. There's some templates. So I could show you, for example, that we have a bunch of templates here that we would assign to you depending on your scope of work. So if you were doing a door inspection, for example, I could find something.
Is there anything but glazing?
No, there isn't. But like, say it was wall framing, whatever. So these are all the checklist items here that we would expect for you to do as part of this process, right? The status indicates where the job is at, like in terms of the task. If it's a deficiency, would like for you to label this as a deficiency. If it's something that is incomplete work, we want to tell the sub that this work is not completed. We need you to complete that work, right? So when we label the task, we have to assign it to somebody. I'm assigning to Cyerra.
See at the bottom, it just says C Gibson. Yeah.
So I'm assigning to Cyerra, for example, she would get a notification.
Oh, this is my account. That's flash. That's
I
not yourself.
I think by default.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. It's assigned to me. And you can decide what plan you want to have that on. The plan would get pulled into this task, the location, start, end date. Pretty much, we call this the task attributes. What are the things that relate to a task that you want to note? One of the reasons why I'm bringing this up is we've had instances where people don't use these tools that are given to them. And when there is an accusation, for example, or there's deficiency, you don't have proof as a tradesperson, even as a coordinator. If you're here, you work in admin and you're going around, if you miss something, it's because you're not doing your job properly, right? So you need to really go in. For example, all these checklists you're seeing here, when I notice that when I check on each of them, the date comes in there as soon as possible, like as soon as I check it. And that indicates that this is when a specific thing was done, right? So if I come here into this room and I'm doing any work and I come in and I look at all the materials, some of them are damaged, I can easily just take a picture of what I'm looking at and upload that picture right here to let them know in case there's a discussion about rework. It doesn't mean that I would not do the rework as a subcontractor. It just means that I have proof to say I'm not responsible for this. And you can do that work, but it's time and material, right? Like you have to get paid and compensated for doing the work because it's not your fault that work wasn't done properly initially. The material was bad, or you left that work in a certain condition. And when you came like 2 weeks later, you're being told something else. You can easily come in here and have that discussion in a way where this wasn't possible a few years ago, right? You want to add it?
Yeah. Has anyone used a tool like this or documented anything while on site in any way? Yeah. Feel free to share. Was it Fieldwire? What was the name of the tool? What was your experience like using that tool?
It was called Company Camp.
Company Camp?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's for smaller contractors, residential, but it essentially does the same thing as this. Interfaces with ownership, customer, and then the field staff and everyone in the company. So when you're on site, it gives you a location. When you take a picture and upload it into an area up app and make notes under the wall. So you are encouraged every time you're on site, take a picture so that it's documented.
Yeah.
Okay.
How about you?
I was using Zootech.
Zootech?
Oh yeah, so it's a snaggy software or punch list software, and I think it's very similar. So when I do the inspection, it's like a targeted inspection specific for a specific area, which is linked to the system, and there's like area codes. So when I, let's say, take a photo and put in comments about his list, and then when I reach the actual office, and it gets pulled the information for the system.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have different levels of access, but what as a PM I would want to know is how many doors have been completed the last week, for example. I want to run reports. I want to see how much I'm billing the owner. So if you don't input your information correctly, you also don't get paid accurately as well, right? So it's always important to do stuff like this. One thing that GCs like EllisDon would also want to know is who are the subcontractors that are delinquent, right? If I have 10,000 deficiencies, and 7,000 of that belongs to your company, I want to know why. How many are you completing every other week, and the time to completion as well. Because if you're not doing well on a specific job, I want to know as a CM with multiple projects to not give you more jobs. So again, it's important that even when you complete those deficiencies, you come into the system here and you update them in a timely manner. I think that's very important. We have integrations. So FeeWire, for example, I think this is Cyerra. I don't think you have that access, but let me check. You don't. But anyways, the point is that tools like this feed into other tools, right? They have integrations with a bunch of other tools, including Gate 3 that Cyerra will talk about at some point today. But so that information gets entered here and can be used on other platforms, including CrewScope that Essen talked about, because we don't want like the duplication of efforts. So once the data is being entered here, we know how many tasks needs to be done for a week, for example. That information gets rerouted to other platforms so that we know what we're working on for the week, and then we take it from there.
Are this information manually charged? Just say we're gathering about deficiency or what to become.
Deficiencies have to be manually. So again, if depending on the size of a project, we have quality QA/QC person on site. They just walk around with an iPad with FeeWire on the iPad. We have the tool on the iPad as well. So you basically just go in and you create a task and you just enter each punch list item. So if something wasn't done correctly or to standard, you just enter as a deficiency and I will assign to the sub. Right? And so if you as a sub, like I said, completes that, I would then go in as a GC for EllisDon and I would use the filter option to filter according to deficiency or the status. And I can just drag and drop. If I feel like this incomplete work is now done, I could just say it's done, EllisDon verified, and I just drop that and that's it. Okay. If you as a GC have been assigned a job and it's incomplete work, and you go in and put all your information, you can change the status. The system will only allow you to say subcontractor verified. And you can change it. And I, as an EllisDon employee, have to go in and verify it that it's completed according to our standard. And if it's not, we're going to have a discussion. So it's that simple.
So it gives you visual information.
Yes. And if you think about EllisDon, if we have areas, right? Toronto, for example, would have like 40 projects, right? Big jobs, millions of dollars. So we need to be able to run these reports on an account level to see what's happening on each project, how many deficiencies we have, how much time we're spending, how much money we're spending on stuff like that. And it's very important for us when we're finishing the job to be also able to generate as-built drawing to hand over to the owner. So that's what this tool can be used for. Because all the changes from the inception to the project is monitored here. So that's something that we need to be able to give the owner at the end of the job, like a very accurate description of the project.
Anyone has any other questions about this tool, how this tool is used on our site, what has been the reception from our subcontractors? Any questions?
So let's say whoever is interested to learn more, only one step person joins a company using software.
Well, yeah, for this particular instance, this is under the assumption that a subcontractor has already been awarded to do whatever the scope of work that they have bid to do. They've already been awarded the work, so we've already signed them on as a part of this project. And at the beginning of the project, there's always an onboarding process and a part of the contract agreement as well that indicates we will be using this software for managing field operations. We will be using this software for project management and invoicing. That is is also a part of the initial startup. And it's a good question to ask too as a subcontractor when you get onboarded to a new project. What software tools am I going to be expected to use as a part of this project? So this one, yes, it's only if you are already a part of this project, but you said you're a commissioning agent?
Yes.
Yeah, this could be used for commissioning as well, by the way, because the checklist items there would help you. So we'll just create like a template of commission, like items that to be checked, and then would create a task, assign, and then you just go in and you check with it.
Because even though we have all the subcontractors doing the work on site, we also will always contract a consultant architect who they might have their own requirements and software from information exchange as well. There have been several instances where an architect or a consultant, they have their own platform that they might want to manage their commissioning documentation, for example. And so now we, EllisDon, are required to either provide them the information to upload into their system, or we need now access to their system so that we can automatically upload the information and avoid some of that duplicated work that we brought up. So even though that we're expecting our subcontractors to use certain tech tools, there are also consultants and architects requiring us to use tech tools as well. So we are feeling that some of that tech software spread as well sometimes.
Yeah, it's something that is a problem. From design phase, we're working with different consultants that use different tools. Yeah, it's always a thing, a back and forth. But like I said, when a job is ongoing, think about like a job that is any hospital project. We have like I have projects right now that have 40,000 tasks. When I say 40,000, all of them might not be deficiency, but if I have 40,000 tasks, I need to be able to look at my project every week and understand what happened at the end of the week. And then they use something like this to evaluate who is doing what, like how many tasks. I can hover around and see how many of the task is a deficiency, how many was completed, and the different status.
So I'll try and explain the practical implication of the question that I was posing. So you said within your technology, you use your drones as well to calculate cut and fill.
That's one example.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now you've used that example. You've used that technology, right? I, as a subcontractor, as an earthworks contractor, I just come in. I already have my quantity. I say, I'll price you per unit this many dollars. You, as a GC, get a quicker result. The moment you just give me all the package, which I have to sieve through, and I have to sit on it, I have to dwell on it, and then I come up with a price. No one else is losing more than a GC. So this is what I implied when I was asking my question.
Like if we have access to the more accurate information, why not share that with?
Why not share that, which reduces the turnaround time. Otherwise, this is the times when technology is part and parcel of life. I have to adopt to new technology. So likewise, everyone does. But the practical implication is what I just told you.
Yeah. I think with that, it definitely, Kingsley mentioned it earlier, is that challenge with the industry as a whole. So if accessing technology tools, if all subcontractors have now access to the same technology tools, or if some subcontractors use those tools and others opt not to, that's where they're getting their competitive advantage. And so as a GC, if we provide all of the subs with the same information, which is typically what we still do with the bidding process, it might not be the most accurate quantities, but it's still the PDF. All subcontractors are given access to the same level playing field of information. So you, as a subcontractor, you might want to decide, okay, do I want to invest this tool so I gain a little bit of a competitive edge against my other competitors, at least until the time where the entire industry has more integration. Ihsan mentioned earlier that construction as compared to other industries has far fell beyond the labor productivity and just as a whole in technology adoption. All the other industries, manufacturing, healthcare, finance, they've all adopted technology much faster and much quicker than the construction sector. So if all of our individual subcontractors, the general contractors, the AEC as a whole is not adopting technology to its full extent, the entire ecosystem still won't be able to leverage all of those integrations as well. So that's, the industry is moving towards that way, but still right now, it's kind of at the discretion of each individual group to choose to do that to get that competitive advantage. Yeah.
I've got any questions.
Any more questions regarding FieldWire? Yeah.
I just wanted to comment on what he said.
Yeah.
I think the reason why PDFs are issued and not the actual file is something to do with intellectual property. And there might be information that's being withheld because it's probably not for the contractor. And that's probably one of the reasons. And secondly, in terms of the label, she's correct. But at the same time, that's the reason why there's an RFI process to clarify in terms of what are the assumptions made. And that's where you do the bid level and bid analysis and leveling.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like that point that you brought up about the intellectual property as well. Okay. So now we're just going to get into some of those prompting questions about what we should be considering when adopting these technology tools. So give me one second. Okay, the first question that we have is, it's kind of summarizing a lot of the discussions we had earlier today, but what are some of the barriers to facing that you might face adopting new technology? So really think about what you are in your particular role and adopting technology. What are some of those barriers? I'm trying to put up the QR code so that you can actually enter it and we can see and discuss. So you could scan this QR code. So repetition of efforts. Who included this? What type of repetition of efforts were you talking about or referencing? We want to share? No? That's no problem. But yeah, repetitive efforts, something to think about, like as you are looking at some of those tools. Usually, if you're looking for a quick win of what you can do as an alternative to adopting or picking up a new software tool that might be a bit more costly, making Excel templates or spreadsheet, replicating those same checklists that you might put into a software. Could a quick win for that be an Excel spreadsheet or template that everybody on your crew, everybody who's using that tool, who's doing that activity has accessible? And so having that as a baseline for everyone to use can help make those processes a little bit more efficient before adopting a new software tool. Efficiency to streamline work processes, creating analytics on building site issues based on different typologies and geography, schedule and planning, a clear understanding of the next task and overall communication. I'd like to solve creating safe and easy workplace environment for workers using technology. That's always a really great improvement to solve. And then accurate scheduling and planning. So I'll start off with this lack of training as the first one. So some field staff crew members might not be as comfortable using certain digital technologies. So the training on and onboarding any tech tool at the beginning is very important. Time to learn. Difficulty signing in. Asan mentioned that with their with this CrewScope product, because they know there would sometimes be difficulties logging in or signing in with email and a password, making something accessible by mobile, just texting and QR codes, things that make it easy to seamlessly get into those tools.
We're going to touch on that later at some point, but like with what's going on right now around the world, like a lot of the companies are more cyber aware of their own information or like proprietary data. So they're doing all these controls in place like multi-factor authentication and all that kind of stuff. And so it's more important for them to put extra layers of security sometimes on some of these applications. We'll talk about that later, but that's why some of the applications are having issues accessing them.
So, and then the next question we want to touch on a little bit, we didn't get too much into AI for this construction technology discussion, but it is the latest technology boom that's it's affecting every sector and including construction technology as well. So we wanted to get a read on what was your feelings towards AI impacting your work in the next few years. It looks like it's increasingly getting a little bit excited. Why not all the way? Yeah.
There is worry. We are worrying about whether the AI, like, because we are under the assumption that the AI would take over jobs from human beings. That's one thing. And second thing, whether using AI will really benefit to our work. Because there are some assumptions it might not be always the case, because it might reduce our human being impact in our work. So it is more about fine what. It's still gray area, but we are not fully understood.
So do you have a comment? Dependency or
Dependency. In terms of people are more relying on what the answers that AI provides. So touching onto that lack of human interaction, where people are relying or have more confidence in what the AI produces versus their own confidence, or they're not increasing their own competency. I would say overall with AI, even though the way that these AI models are built and those systems, it's still reliant on the years of historical information that we have put into it. And so those models might get better and better, but there is no creation of new information. We are still more creative, conscious beings that can actually create new information. And if we can't replicate exactly how our brain works, how can we design AI that actually replicates how we work? So I would say we embrace the AI, but also know that we're still very far ahead from where it's actually going to replace humans. It might be replacing automated tasks. It might be replacing some of those smaller, tedious tasks, but overall, humans will still be actively in the loop. And also when you're looking at AI tech tools and assessing, okay, if it's ChatGPT, if it's any model that's identifying things in the scope, seeing what is the source of that information. How did the AI determine that this there should be flags? Seeing that source information, looking for some of those information when you're looking at AI tools as well.
Honestly, I'll be honest with you. Like to her point, it's low information, repeatable tasks right now that, like, there are robots now in some tech conferences that they're selling that would just walk around job sites and take 360 photos. That used to be somebody's job, right? So it really depends on what we're talking about. Some jobs are deemed to be safe right now, but like I've had people taking photos of like of a manual on ChatGPT and saying my appliance is making this sound, what's wrong? And it's just recording the sound and it's telling you what to do, right? So there are some jobs that might be at risk, but ultimately we're nowhere close to it replacing like anything that we do today. It's meant to help us. We have tools now where a time-lapse like camera on sites that takes photos every 3 minutes and analyzes like what's happening with like a tractor, or like just giving us a ton of data that we're not currently using. Maybe in a few years' time, we'll put all of that data into a different system to analyze and produce something else. But it's meant to right now help us be more efficient, to be more productive. Like I said initially, we have tools that helps us analyze risk in contracts. We're not replacing the individual that is actually looking at those contracts, because we can't trust any AI 100%. There's some nuances on documents that we need you as a human being to look at and to analyze. So it's just meant to help you do your job better. We're still long ways away from anything like that happening, in my opinion.
So now thinking about whether to adopt the tech tool, what is your top consideration for you at this time? So, for someone who chose meeting the client requirement, why that versus the cost of the tool as a top choice?
So I did choose meeting clients' cost requirements because waiting for or having the project within the deadline or meeting the quality, meeting the customer client requirements, to me has more value from the perspective of delivering a project. If the customer client is not satisfied, it will be detrimental instance of the company reputation, future business with other partners. That is why I choose over more meeting the client requirements and time save.
Yeah, I would agree with those sentiments that you shared. That's kind of hit the nail on the head right about. Yeah.
I was going to say, it depends on where you sit. Like if you are an owner versus you're working with a GC, the cost would be something to consider, because having worked with different general contractors and builders, there's so many different systems that can pull it, and there's always something new coming out. So when you invest in one, I've had the experience of, well, another tool comes out that can
Do it
better serve us, but we're already invested so much of this one that we can't make that change. So the cost of the tool matters from my perspective. Getting it right will be great, but the cost factor.
Yeah, I think it would be good to share a little bit, going back again, how we consider what tools we're buying for when we decide to buy or partner with a tool in that case.
Yeah, we can do it.
Maybe you could provide some feedback because
No, like one of the things that I would say for if you're a smaller company or GC is understanding because when it comes to like what's in the industry right now, there's a lot of, in my experience working with people on the project teams, like tech fatigue. It's just like too many tools to do different things, right? Like, and people are trying to sell all these kind of things to you. You have to understand sometimes you don't need to spend as much money to get the value. Like, we don't need the extra bells and whistles. Can you get me to produce like the quality for my client or the general contractor? And that's what you should be looking at, really. What are you trying to do? Don't focus too much on these other things, because like half the time you think about these other tools that we even use in our private life. You don't, even your iPhone, you're not using like 40% of what the iPhone can actually do, but you're paying for it, right? So understanding like what your requirements are and what you need to deliver, and finding a product that, and in some instances, it's just an Excel spreadsheet. Like, you don't have to complicate like issues, right?
Well, I'll just skip to security questions. So what's one way you can protect our company or project data? So this is kind of a question going into the security, data privacy, those concerns, because that is a large part of adopting technology tools. Let's put this back up. But if you want to share any MFA.
You can start discussing. Yes, I was going. Oh, okay, cool. I think some of the questions, answers that we have here, they're pretty good, depending on the size of your company as well, depending on the project. This is very, in most cases, project specific as well. We have some public projects, right? Like if you're building something or working for a GC that has a public project, some of this stuff might be less important. I'm not saying they're not important at all. One of the controls that we have as a company is doing your security clearance. For example, to work on a secure project, you need your clearance, right? But even if you have your clearance, I think when someone talks about data privacy requirements. That's very important, right? Like understanding the classification of a document you're working with. If it's a plan, but you're building a military facility, for example, or you're building, even if it's not a defense contract project, it might be a project that is sensitive in nature, right? A project that has a lot of public sentiments to it. It's like we need to be able to manage our documents, understanding the project policy regarding printing out a plan and taking it out of sight, for example, or even what you do on your own personal device. If we give you access to FueWire and you're working on a project that is sensitive to us, we don't expect you to share that information with other people that are not on the project or don't have the same clearance that you have, right? So it's basically understanding that there's a trust that needs to exist between general contractor and subcontractor. And if you break that trust, that might just mean that you're not longer working for us on any other projects. Like, it's that simple. Some of the jobs that you would get today is because of your relationship with a specific project manager or CM, right? So what we want to do is protect our reputation, because we have a reputation, and that's how we're able to get some jobs. And if you break that by exposing some of the information that we give to you, just some things that happen on site, sometimes it's just common sense about taking videos on your phone of a site or something you're not supposed to be doing, you would know not to share that stuff. It put us in a difficult situation in some instances, right? I don't want to like name projects, but if you're working on a project and to get into a job site, you have to sign in, sign out, check yourself, just follow that specific requirements. Because even when we talk about the tech AI boom, we're building data centers, for example, right? Like for Google, Microsoft, all these places where they're not federal government projects, but they're considered to be very sensitive and confidential projects. When you go on those sites, you need to be able to understand. Obviously, it's imperative on the project to educate you on what the policy is. A company like EllisDon would have a data loss prevention policy to ensure that we're protecting, and we have to first label like data, right? Like to understand if it's confidential or if it's public. But honestly, you need to pay attention to stuff like that. In past, we don't do that kind of stuff, right? You just leave paper flying everywhere. Like you need to be sensitive to the kind of information that you're handling and understand what happens if you break that trust.
So a lot of these responses that you've given align with that. So creating project-specific folders that only those people who have access to that particular information has access to that folder, labeling sensitive ones as classified or private so that they're not shared with other members of the crew or the company, IP disclosures. Yes, multi-factor authentication. Pretty much every technology tool to this that are coming out today usually requires MFA, data privacy requirements, and then knowing more information about safe to secure database.
One thing I'd like to add is some of these products that we give you access to, the system is not sophisticated enough to have granular access. So for example, I'm giving you access as an electrical subcontractor, but you could also see stuff from mechanical or any other division, right? Like it's a limitation of the product, but because you have that access does not mean that you should go do some other stuff on other people's scope, right? So again, it's just having that professionalism and trust that we have to stick to your own scope and be professional at what you do.
So I'll just, because we're at time now, I'll just quickly we can go verbally through the next two questions. So what kind of information would you consider most sensitive on your project? I'll still show it if you would like to, but I know for sure crew members, that their personal data information, if you're using an app or a tech tool on their personal phone, is it tracking their location while they're on site or off site? Things like personal profile information would be considered sensitive data. Some of the client-specific information that Kingsley mentioned earlier would be very sensitive information that you don't necessarily, that should not be shared beyond certain groups, beyond certain verified stakeholders. And financial information as well.
You shouldn't have access to that if I give you like your own financial information is different from my own financial information as a GC. You shouldn't have access. But in some instances, if someone gives you access beyond what you should have and you come across that information, that's also something that you shouldn't disclose. When we talk about private information in some instances, we're describing your own private information. In some instances, when you're on a construction site, you've given up that privacy to a certain instance because it's implied that I can monitor what's happening on my job site, right? Like there's some cameras on site. Some of them are analyzing your productivity and what's happening on sites. We're not infringing on your privacy when that happens. But I'm talking if you have a subcontractor or an hourly worker that will give you an SIN, for example, that's private information to that specific hourly worker. You as a GC, you as an admin person, you're obligated to protect that information because if something goes wrong with that information, you're responsible for that, right? So it really depends on the type of data you're dealing with and in what situation.
And then who should be responsible for ensuring that data security? If we want to choose, but I think everyone might err. Okay, the QR code is there. I would hope that 100% of everyone chooses everyone, and it's from the different perspective. You as an individual should take ownership and responsibility for keeping your own data secure, and then you should ask of your employer, ask of your the owner, the GC, the sub that you're working with, that, hey, how are you keeping my data private, keeping it secure?
Yeah, no, that's true. Everyone has different level. I'm not going to disclose your quote to someone else, for example, right? So that's how it's a collaborative effort to ensure that that information is safe. So,
wow, that's it.
Yeah, I think we're at time.
Yeah, we're at time now, so we don't want to take any additional time via Saturday. We will be around just after we close off here, just to answer any more questions, to talk, to get to know a little bit more about you and your roles. We hope that you have gotten some value out of the conversations and presentations and discussions we had today. Are there any other questions before we close out? I just don't want to go with hopping back and forth with the PowerPoint.
You mentioned that you have been a few times on site. How did it help you? What was the challenge, and in what site specific?
So for me, I started as working with a GC in a few different roles as a field coordinator. So a lot of the early experience that I had was, for example, chasing deficiency items. I was responsible for going on site, going around and documenting all the deficiency items that hadn't been completed, calling or chasing down the subcontractors to say, hey, I noticed that this wasn't completed, this wasn't. And I realized how difficult some of that was, especially if it was nearing the end of the project and the subs had already moved off. They might not necessarily want to come back to site. So understanding being on the field has definitely informed what I do now in the software development team. So understanding that, okay, how can we make this as easy as possible to get them to provide their information? Because when you're physically on site, sometimes navigating with the iPad or navigating with a mobile phone, or if you're already removed, how can we communicate that a little bit more seamlessly? So I spent a lot of my early times doing those kinds of reviews on site, and then I spent a little bit of time as a consultant doing envelope and architectural reviews. So I worked a lot with glazing contractors and roofing contractors, doing glazing reviews, window installation reviews, and going on roofs to do roof inspections as they're being installed. And so for me, I know some of my frustrations came in some of those repetitive tasks. I was going to do a roof inspection for 4 different projects, the same type of roof, and it would usually be the same checklist. And so for me, it was very repetitive to have to type out a new Word document or write down the new notes every time for the same roofing system. Every time I went to do 4 and 5 reviews. And it slowed me down a little bit because some of that manual process, I'm just trying to quickly get the notes on site. So looking for tools that can help me do my job a little bit easier is what motivated me to be a part of the group that develops this technology. And then when I go to do interviews with my project teams, with the site supers, with the coordinators, because I have been on site, I can empathize with them a little bit more, versus sometimes when you're dealing with larger technology companies, they might be focused more on developing technology tools, and they might not empathize with the users as much as we would.
If I can add to that too, when I go to job sites and I see people that have built some of the most historic buildings in the country tell me that they've been building those buildings before I was even born, why do you need to introduce me to this tool when I can do my job, right? Like, it's almost like there's a disconnect between people in corporate construction offices and what's happening on site, because the procurement of this tool sometimes doesn't take into account what people actually need. We don't want to procure technology to like boggle people, if it's not going to save them a material amount of time, and I mean material, I mean like not 2-3 minutes. It has to be something that they see value in, because they can build. They don't need like this extra stuff. So you have to honestly meet them where they are, and I show them the value. It's sometimes very difficult. People don't like using technology generally. It's not even a construction tech thing. People just, they feel like they're not good at it and they don't want to use it. So you have to go on site, see what they're doing, understand where and how to show them value.
Yeah. And then just to bounce off one thing you said, Kingsley, with the example of, there are builders out here who have been doing this before we were born. So they have 50, 60 years of experience. And so they know it very well. But then the gap between early or new junior staff coming on a site, they can't necessarily tap into that 50 years of experience because it's all in there.
It's a place, it's not implicit, like it's in their head.
Yeah. So I remember when I was early on the field, and sometimes it was difficult for me to know everything that I needed to think about when I went to a site. Yeah, I was going to do a review of a window, and I knew the guidelines that I needed to refer to, but I'm talking to a glazer who's been doing this for 10 years. So being able to leverage some of the experience, whether he is sharing that data so that it does provide those checklists or better inform the guidelines as a new person, just having a new list, finding ways to leverage some of their historic experience for new staff, especially if there's people who aren't as interested in joining construction in this time right now, trying to leverage some of their experience. Yeah.
Another question? Okay. Yeah, together for Cyerra. Thank you so much. I want to say thank you, Cyerra, and thank you, Kingsley. This was a very informative session, and I'm sure everybody learned something, right? There are some takeaways that you can get from this. And also want to thank you for spending your time here with us on a Saturday when you could be doing other things to, help us to really leverage construction, because that's a technology, because that's what we want to do, right? Our copy that you would have learned something that you can implement in your business, even if it's in, on your job, in your everyday life, right? The aim is, as they would have told you, is not to let you think that tech is going to replace you, right? But it's to enhance your job. It's to enhance your business, and you want to utilize tech more into your business just so that you're more efficient, just so that you're able to get the contracts, you're able to, carry out and not do the cost overruns and all of those things that, you get into when you're executing out there on the job site. So thank you so much too for attending and for me so attentive and all of that. And as I said, I hope you all learned something. Feel free to network. Still have a little bit of time that you can, launch our own network. We have some food downstairs that you can take with you as well. So you have, and EllisDon have a beautiful booth